All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Freedom First podcast. Today, we have an exciting guest on. I'm so just humbled and grateful to have her on. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Amberley Snyder to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I'm glad we could finally get to visit.
Yeah, I'm excited and just kind of reading your story and kind of following you and whatnot throughout your career the last year or so. I'm excited to kind of get to sit down and talk about it today. So, on the Freedom First podcast, we have a little segment called the Freedom Minute, just some kind of rapid fire questions to kind of get us fired up. And I know this first one, I actually didn't have it on the list, but I'm going to go and throw it out because I know with your nonprofit and everything you do, it goes right along with this. But what does freedom mean to you?
Oh, to me, freedom is the ability to do something that makes you happy. And I think that that's the biggest part for me is
Oh,
if you have the freedom, then you have the ability to do something that makes you happy.
I love that answer. Favorite movie or show growing up?
Ooh, my favorite one right now is Warrior. But growing up, I would probably have to say American Outlaws, or maybe the Harry Potter series.
Okay.
Yeah, probably one of those.
Nice. I like it. Number one item on your bucket list.
Number one item on my bucket list, speak at all 50 states.
How many have you been to so far?
41.
Oh, almost nine left. Which
So
one?
I'm getting close. I'm
Which,
getting close.
which ones do you still have to visit?
Oh, I have like Alaska, Hawaii, Virginia, one of the Carolinas. I want to say North Carolina, um, some random ones over there on the east side, right? I need to speak in some of those. I've pretty much got everything on the west side,
Those are
but
some
just some of
pretty
those
exciting.
east
Those are some
east
pretty exciting
states.
states, though. Alaska, Hawaii, Carolinas. Like,
I know. Yeah, they'll make like a good trip
oh
along with
yeah,
it.
there you go. Um, proudest moment. Proudest moment.
Oh, proudest moment, honestly, was probably when I became an aunt.
Oh, how
I would say
exciting!
is my proudest moment.
And from is that so? How many siblings do you have?
There's six kids in my family,
Six
so I
kids.
have five
Okay.
siblings, and we only have one with a baby, so I have one nephew. And I would say that was, I didn't even know you could love something that much.
Man,
Um,
that's amazing.
so yeah, that would definitely be it.
Last question. If you could sit down and have a conversation with anyone throughout the history of the world, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I would go back in time and talk to my dad. Not he's alive. He's here. It's not that he's not,
Yeah.
but I would go back and visit with him when he was younger and kind of pick his brain on life. I know maybe that's kind of a crazy one, but that's who I would pick.
Yeah, that's a unique answer. I think that's unique. Just kind of seeing his thoughts back then, right? And the kind of the
Yeah,
process.
yeah. Like know him as like a teenager in high school or and at the very beginning of his major league career and talk to him. And I mean, obviously he can kind of tell you what he thinks he thought, but I would love to know him then and really pick apart his brain.
So that leads us kind of into your story. So where did you grow up? What was your childhood like growing up? I know your dad played Major League Baseball. So how did that what was it like kind of growing up with all that going on?
Yeah, so my family is pretty special. You know, my dad was a major league ball player for 8.5 years. And so, of course, having that in the background has to make us naturally athletic or, I don't know, competitive or something of the sort. But my mom, she was a cheerleader. She had a horse when she was younger. So she had kind of the horse background as well. The combination between them both, honestly, is definitely what the foundation is for me. I mean, I would say I got the competitive nature and the hardworking and, knowing how to be, I don't know, successful from my dad. But my mom was always the one that, made you believe in yourself, like made you know that all those big goals that you want to do, you're capable of accomplishing them. So I would say I grew up through that. That's like my background. We lived in California till I was 7. Then we moved to Utah, and that's when I got my first barrel horse and started competing in rodeo.
So what brought you guys from LA to Utah?
My mom just said she wanted to raise her kids in a more family oriented environment. California is kind of a tough. I mean, I miss parts of California, right? Even as a small kid. But when I go back now, I'm like, all right, I could have maybe lived here in some aspects. But man, I think that moving to Utah probably was a big part, especially for me and my rodeo career, that I don't know how it would have gone differently if I'd have lived in California my whole life. So she wanted to move more family oriented communities and all of that.
So your dad played for the Dodgers, correct? For at least part of his
He
career?
did. He did. He did.
Okay.
Yep,
So,
for the end of his career. He started his career with the Indians, ended
okay.
his career with the Dodgers, and had a few in the middle.
So what was that like? Just, I mean, you kind of talked about it briefly, the competitive edge, but I mean, did you guys get to kind of travel with him at all? Go watch him play? Like,
I wish we had. I wish we had more. He retired in 94, so I was born in 91. So,
okay.
I mean, I was still pretty
Yeah,
small, right?
yeah.
Like I was like 3 and 4. So, we didn't really go on the road with him. Well, my mom said she did. She did take us on the road a couple times, but we don't remember
You're
that.
so
So
young.
we're
Yeah.
tiny.
2 or 3.
Yeah, the only thing I can even remember is that the Dodgers would have a family day and they would bring everyone out on the field and play like a family baseball game. And I can like vaguely remember going on the field and playing those games, but that's about it.
So you guys get to Utah, and you briefly mentioned that your mom had a horse, was kind of into it a little bit. So how did you kind of get your start into it?
Well, she definitely just saw I had an interest in the horses, and because of that, she wanted to make sure it was possible. So they found a place when I was 3 years old in California that would take a 3-year-old to start riding lessons, and that's where I started. She didn't get to do that when she was younger. She just had a horse, but didn't have anybody get to teach her or for her family to rodeo or anything like that. So when she saw I had the interest, she just wanted to make sure that if it was something I wanted to pursue, that it was absolutely available.
And
So that's where I started.
so I mean, you kind of grew up. I was reading some of your bio. You were an FFA. You were you were in leadership positions with an FFA. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. So then, up into high school, right? You get into FFA and you get involved in that. And of course you join it because that's just where all your friends are.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're in the group of Hicks, I suppose you probably should be in the FFA. Like that's
yeah.
just kind of how they match.
I was an FFA.
So that's what I did. Yeah. So and then you get it. Like you're like, all right, that's just kind of where I belong, I think. So I'm glad I did because all of my leadership came from there. I mean, a lot of my leadership skills and then even my speaking. I really think I'm a speaker because of my FFA career. And so I'm really glad that it all fell together.
Yeah. So when did you start competing? Where you were barrel racing? I know you're doing some other stuff as well. So when did you kind of start competing? Was that kind of pretty early on?
Yeah, so I started competing when I was 7. So when we moved to Utah, I got my first barrel horse and I started then. So started running barrels at 7 years old and then did it through the junior rodeo days and up into high school and all of anything I could do, I tried to do.
Yeah.
And luckily I had parents that were supportive on that.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, like with anything with agriculture or horses or, rodeo, it takes a lot of hard work. And it sounds like both your parents and family were hard workers, right? And did they kind of instill that hard work into you from an early age?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, honestly, and I'm sure you could even relate, from growing up the big part that it plays on what your parents instill into you.
Right.
And I think you see it the older you get, right? The older you get, the more you recognize how important it was that they taught you all those life essential skills
Yeah.
and, sometimes let you fail so that you could figure out how to persevere. And I mean, all of those things. And so I'm very lucky. I guess I could say I'm very lucky that I had parents that instilled all that in me.
It's kind of funny because like when you're younger, like sometimes you like, oh, you don't know what you like, maybe not, you don't say it out loud, but like inside you're like, oh, like
Sure
they
you
don't know what
do.
they're talking
You
about.
definitely tell them. Yeah, I think you definitely tell them. You're like, parents, you know nothing. I have no
Yeah.
idea what you guys are talking about. Like, you're not me, right? You always say like, you're not me and you don't understand. I'm like, nah, they kind of had a pretty good idea.
Yeah. And then, but the older you get, you start realizing like, oh, like, they were right for sure. Like they definitely had the best interest and they were right all along, but it takes a while to kind of get that, to kind of let that sink in, I guess I should say.
Right. I totally agree. That's how it is.
So you start competing, and you at a pretty high level, right? You start, in different competitions, start winning and whatnot. So where did, I mean, where did that all kind of play in? Like you were doing really well. Was this in high school, obviously? And then you had obviously the accident, right? So kind of leading up to that, and then the accident itself, what was that kind of whole experience like? And then we'll get into the aftermath in just a few minutes.
So, I mean, I'd had all the goals rodeoing, through the junior rodeo days and the buckaroos and all of that stuff. And then up into high school. And that's kind of the path you follow. You do these high school rodeos and even some other associations like the Little Britches Association, and you do the best you can in those. So that's what I was doing. I was competing in a lot of events and was doing the best I could. And of course, it had kind of all played out by my senior year. I was a world all around champion and had made the high school finals, and all of those things were going right. So I had these big lofty goals ahead of what I wanted to do next, which then, I think that God laughed a little bit and said, I'm glad you think you have a plan. Here's actually the plan. And so we made a pretty big shift, going into my accident of what my life looked like after.
So, so the accident happens, and what was the biggest, I guess, challenge, I guess, because obviously, kind of hearing your story, kind of listening, but for those that don't know, the accident happens, but it's kind of the recovery. That's kind of when it all starts, right? And the process of hard work, the challenges that take place, and then, now being able to share that story. But what was the biggest challenge that you had in the aftermath of the accident, both mentally and physically?
Oh man. Yeah, I think that when you have to start life over in a chair, there's no handbook about how it's going to fit you, and honestly, every single injury is so different. So to have a spinal cord injury and they can give you kind of this guidance of what they think you should do. But honestly, especially for me, because no one had done what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
there wasn't a guidance book on that. So the hardest thing that I would even say I still deal with is patience. I mean, just the patience with myself, with my body, that it's not what I want it to be, with other people, with my chair, with my horses. I mean, with everything. It's just that patience of being able to go through it and not get so overwhelmed and so discouraged and so frustrated when it's not going right.
Right. And what are your actual injuries that took place on that day?
Yeah, so I could just tell, I guess I overcorrected my truck. I was on my way to Denver, Colorado. I overcorrected my truck, resulted in rolling. I was thrown from the vehicle and hit a fence post on the side of the road, which is what broke my back. And it broke it at T11, T12. That's where it injured my spinal cord. Incomplete injury. I've regained where I can feel to my knees, not perfect everywhere, mostly just on the front, like on my thighs. I've regained, I can feel that and move a couple muscles, but I've been lucky to get even that back. But of course, it's still a spinal cord injury, and there's so many other things that go along with that.
And what did the doctors kind of tell you? Did they tell you like your limits right away? And what was your kind of reaction from that? Because I know we hear the stories, the doctor saying, well, you're never going to do this again. You're never going to, ride a horse again. You're never going to ride whatever that is again. And what did they tell you? And what was your kind of reaction from that?
Yeah, so I mean, they do, and I get why they have to, right? Doctors have to be kind of the pessimistic side,
Sure.
even just for their own safety. So yeah, I told them I ride horses. When am I going to get back on a horse? And they said, well, you're not going to do that. And if you can get back on a horse, you're not going to rodeo. So getting back on a horse is going to be pretty hard, but competing in rodeo is impossible. Nobody does that. So that's not what you're going to be able to do. And that just wasn't it for me. I'm like, no, you don't get it. My horses it's not just a pastime or a hobby. I mean, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I've got to figure it out.
Right. And how long was, obviously the journey's always going, right, with an injury like this, but how long did it take from, the recovery and to finally getting back on a horse? And what was that all like? Because it's absolutely incredible. And I'm just so amazed by what you've kind of overcome. Because a lot of people that go through these injuries, they're not as lucky, or maybe they don't have that same, passion or something to look forward to, which you did, right? You wanted to get back there, but what was that kind of journey like, and how long did it take you to get back on the horse?
It was 4 months. 4 months after my accident was when I finally convinced my mother and doctors I was getting back on. I probably would have done it sooner if I could have, but that was as soon as I could convince everyone that it was a good idea as well, or whether it wasn't a good idea, but we should just be doing it. So it took me 4 months to get back on. It was 18 months before I competed again. And I wish that was a lot sooner, but I went through a pretty rough patch. I actually went without my horses for 9 months. Kind of quit, put it aside. I just didn't know what else I was going to do. Had to learn how to live life in a chair and then come back to my horses. So it was 18 months before I was actually back to competing.
And mentally, what was the biggest challenge mentally that you went through? I'm sure you had ups and downs along the way, but what was like that biggest challenge, and how were you able to overcome that mentally?
Oh, I mean, it's just, it's not the same, right? So when your life gets flipped upside down and you want to have the pieces that you had before, but they're not the same, and they're not going to be.
Right.
And so mentally that's very discouraging when I'm like, okay, I used to be able to do this and now I can't. So then that gets really frustrating. Or like, I used to be able to do this by myself and now someone else has to do it. I can't get on my horse by myself. Someone's got to lift me. It's like all of these things go into play and it just kind of beats at you because you just feel like, well, that's not fair. Well, why am I not tough enough? Well, why am I not strong enough? Why didn't I recover? And you feel like that and it just kind of weighs on you. And you just have to figure out, I don't know, how to shift your perspective. And that's something I have to do a lot. It's not like I've just gotten it figured out one time and now I'm a-okay. I mean, it's just shifting your perspective and trying to figure out how you can do what you want to do.
Yeah, and I mean, we see this all the time, whether with car accidents or even people getting kicked or falling off horses, or in motorcycle accidents, all over the place in all situations. But what would you kind of tell someone that has, and you talk to people, I'm sure, all the time that are in similar situations as yourself, but what would you tell someone that is in a situation like yourself that, has been paralyzed or going through an injury that's life-changing? What would you kind of tell them to kind of keep going, to kind of not quit?
Yeah, the first thing I like to tell people is that it's okay to have a bad day. I think our world tries to tell us that having a bad day is, not allowed, right? Because that would make you weak or that makes you not tough enough or whatever. Like all those things I was just saying, those mental blocks. And when you have a bad day, you feel like maybe you're the only person that feels like that. It's okay to have a bad day, right? It's okay to be like, wow, it just kind of sucks today. And that might end up, you venting to a friend or you crying or whatever, right? I mean, I don't know. It's just however anybody handles that. But, move through that rather than bottle it all up, move through all those emotions so that you are capable of moving on to the next one. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I tell people it's okay to have a bad day because tomorrow doesn't have to be. And so if you can move through that bad day and feel it and let it go, then when the next day comes along, you can look to what goal is next, what plan is next, what do you want to accomplish and how can you get there? So that's really what I like to tell people is that, I mean, I know with what I post or what they see or how I speak, right? Everyone just assumes like, I just don't have bad days. And I'm like, man, that is not true. I have bad days. And bless the hearts of those who have to hear about them. But the lucky part is that I have people who will help me move through those so that I can have better days ahead. And I think that is important.
Absolutely. And because like on social media, like everybody posts, the great days, the good things, the awesome things, and people paint their life in a way, but people don't always see like the bad days, right? And the struggles that we all go through. And, I think we all need to kind of see more of that because everyone goes through it, right? Whether it's, yourself or whether it's Tom Brady or, the best in the world, we all have bad days. And I love that message that, it's okay, right? There's always tomorrow, there's better days ahead, but it's okay to have a bad day. And, those kind of dark moments, I guess.
Yeah. You have to know that it's all right. It makes you human. It
Yeah.
doesn't make you weak.
We're all in this together. We all have bad days, right?
Uh-huh, exactly.
So, I mean, you've obviously started sharing your story. You have a book out, and you do a lot of speaking engagements and just a lot of different stuff, right? The Walk Ride Rodeo, and you've starred in Yellowstone. So, what what's been I guess, the biggest thing that you've kind of got out of sharing your story, and what's that kind of brought to you as well? Obviously, giving back to others and sharing your story and being a great influence and having impact, but also, I mean, that's got to give you a lot of hope and purpose as well to kind of keep on going through your own story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I have one of the greatest jobs in the world. People hire me in to come in and speak and share my story. But in the meantime, it's reminding me that I can handle it. And I get to meet some amazing people who are facing harder things than I can even imagine. And they inspire me. It's the little kids, I think, get my heart the most when you go places and these little kids just come and they just steal you. I mean, I love that. The people that I get to meet and the places I've gotten to see, all of those things, they're huge. And I'm lucky for that. Whether it's on, because of the movie or because of Yellowstone, or they've heard of my book, or they've seen me run barrels, or whatever it is, whatever they've seen me on, and then they bring me in and I get to come and meet these people. It's pretty rewarding. It really does remind me that even though my wheelchair sucks, because I won't tell you it doesn't suck, because it does, that even though that's the case, I mean, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And that reminder is something we all need sometimes.
Yeah, and what's it kind of been like? I mean, you do a lot. You do a lot of speaking, and you were in was it season 3 of Yellowstone? You appeared,
Yeah,
yeah.
season 3.
So how was that? Well, how was that all like? And
It was
how did that
so
all kind of
fun. It was so fun.
come together?
Well, I mean, yeah, like so I know one of the guy who provided horses for the first 2 seasons. Um I know him, and so he had told Taylor Sheridan about my story, but it was like, it just hadn't really fit. Well, then they needed that kind of a story. So I had gotten a little bit of a heads up of they might call me to have me on the show. But really, it's just an email, and they just email you and say, "Hey, we wrote you into the script, so we're going to need you to show up." And that's kind of how it goes. So I'm like, okay, well, let's figure out a schedule because I'm kind of busy, and not that you want to say that to the director or producers of Yellowstone, right? That you're too busy. But anyway, it worked out and I was able to go on there. I didn't get to meet the whole cast, just who was in my scene, but um, I know they're going to have a reunion at some point and I should be invited, no doubt. So I think it'll be fun. And it was cool to have like a little cameo in such a awesome show that everyone knows about. And I felt pretty honored for that.
That's amazing. You know, it's funny because you say you don't want to tell the producer you're too busy. So I had Dakota Meyer on the show. Dakota's a Medal of Honor recipient, and when President Obama called him up, he was working at the time, and he told the people, "Well, I'm working, so I'm busy right now too. So you call me back on my lunch." So he told the president,
Yeah.
he told the president this at the time, and that's just kind of how, like, being humble and stuff. So I was cracking up when he told that story. But just kind of funny. Brought back a
Well, because
memory.
you're just like, you can't do that.
Yeah, he's like, I'm
You
busy
can't do
too.
that, but right, right.
That's funny. So yeah, I mean, definitely reunion, and it is pretty cool to see you on there and just have that experience, I'm sure. So you have a lot going on, obviously, with your foundation. And how's the foundation going? Like, what kind of tell the people, what is the foundation? What's kind of the mission for it, and what do you kind of have going on with it?
Okay, so the foundation, first of all, it's a lot more work than what I thought it should be. So I need to get some people because running it myself,
That's a lot.
pretty much me and my dad are running it. It's a lot. So we finally have it up and running. So that part is good. So it's called the Amberley Snyder Freedom Foundation. And the whole point of the foundation, the whole purpose I hope to serve is to give people pieces of freedom. So I know for me after my accident, to lose all of my independence and everything I was capable of doing just in an instant was extremely frustrating. So I know whether it's, it doesn't have to be a chair, right? Like everyone goes through things that you can strip that independence from you. So I want to help people get those back. So it could be a ramp to go in your house. It could be hand controls in a vehicle. It could be drop down. I have like these drop down shelves in my kitchen. I mean, all of these little pieces that can eventually help people be able to be more independent, whether in the rodeo world or out. So when I have it all up and running with enough money, right? So that's kind of where I'm at, is I'm kind of in the fundraising stage of it. So when I have it so that I can go ahead and start getting applications, and that will be my goal overall.
That's incredible. And what are some of the things you guys have? Like, what are some of the goals of it? What are some of the kind of, the future outlook of the foundation? Like, what are some of the things that you want to accomplish? Like in the big scheme of things, once, you have the fundraising, you have the things together that you could actually talk about.
Oh, I hope that people are going to be able to send in their stories of somebody who maybe was injured in some way or another, and what would help them, right? Like what would give them a piece of freedom. And then I can help provide that. I know that all those little pieces of freedom, like they mean so much. Being able to drive again after my accident, getting hand controls put in a vehicle was huge. I mean, it made me feel like I was able to go out and do something independently. So it's just that I want to be able to help people feel that independence and be able to utilize the tools that we can possibly give them to improve their lives overall. That they're maybe not stuck at home. Maybe they can get a job now that they have a vehicle and hand controls. I would love to get to the point that I could be like Ellen, and it's like a car for you, a car for you, a
Yeah,
car for
there
you,
you
right?
go.
Like that would be super sweet. We'll see. We'll see how it gets to get big and up and running. But that would be kind of the big goal.
Yeah, I love the whole idea of it and your guys' mission. Where can people kind of find it? Where could they donate? Where could they find more information?
So if you go on my website, amberleysnyder.org, there is a foundation tab, and you can go ahead and donate right there to the foundation, and it'll come straight to us. And then, like I said, when we get it all up running, we have enough money, then we're going to be able to start putting it out to get applications.
That's amazing. So hopefully anyone listening, go check it out. Or maybe, if you are someone listening that's been through a similar situation, maybe, you could also find some inspiration there as well. So a couple last things. What are some of the greatest accomplishments? Because I know you qualified for your first pro rodeo on the Wilderness Circuit finals in 2021. What did that kind of mean to you?
That meant a lot, to be able to go to expand, I guess, the stage that I perform on. I'm the only professional paralyzed rail racer in the entire United States, so I don't get my own category. I've got to compete with
Congratulations.
everyone out there. Thank you. And
That's
so,
amazing.
being that, you got to run with everyone. You got to run with the best of the best. And so my goal last year was to be able to make circuit finals. And I knew it would be like that itself would be a tough goal. My circuit is extremely gritty. And, my horse didn't start out real great. We actually had a really bad beginning of the season, but we were able to kind of regroup and get it back together in order to finish strong and make the finals. So that meant a lot. I mean, it's one of those kind of reminders like, okay, Amberly, it doesn't matter if you're in that chair, you can't kick your horse, all those things. Like, you really can't accomplish these goals. Just you have to have some things line up to do that. And you can't give up when you want to, when it gets hard. So that goal was kind of a reminder to me of, like you are capable of more.
Yeah. Is that one of your most proud moments? I mean, obviously going from the accident and having, what you were kind of looking forward to kind of taken away, in a sense, and then getting into last year in 2021, getting there. Was that like one of your most proud moments of your career so far?
Oh, yeah, I would say so. I would say like that, just to be able to qualify, and then even to go into the circuit finals and end up placing in two of the three rounds and ending up in the average. I mean, that really, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was pretty tickled. I'm not gonna lie, I'm competitive enough that I was like, man, I should have won the finals, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's kind of like where you go next. But definitely humbled in the fact that I was able to be there, and my horse did so well, and I was so proud of him that he, got us there.
Amberly, what are some of your future plans, whether it's in rodeo or television or speaking? I know we just talked about the nonprofit or the foundation, but what are some of your kind of future plans in rodeo and other endeavors?
So I eventually want to make the national finals, and that's a goal I think every probably barrel racing cowgirl in the world would say. So I hope at some point I'm going to be able to accomplish that, have the horses and all the abilities line up to do that. Of course, make it back to the American. Like that would be phenomenal. I've made it to the semifinals a couple times, and then we don't quite make it out of the semifinals. So eventually make it back there. And I don't know. I mean, that in my rodeo world would kind of be the way I'd want to go. Then, speaking world, all 50 states, like we talked about.
Yeah.
That's definitely a goal that I have. And then
9
with my
left.
foundation, of course, to do that.
That's incredible. And as we kind of wrap this up, I have a couple little last segments here. What would you you've obviously kind of shared a little bit about what you would tell people that have been in a similar situation as yourself, but just to your experience, you've seen kind of the lows, you've seen the highs, and you've experienced a lot here, and you're still very young. What would you tell people, what does it take to kind of achieve that level of success, whether it's in rodeo or business or just trying to accomplish a goal? What does it take?
Oh, first is you can't be content. You can't be content where you're at. So if you want to be bigger than where you are, then you can't stay there. And changes have to be made. And changes are scary, but if you don't make those and start making those risks, then there's never going to be something bigger ahead. So, I mean, that's the first thing I say is like, if you want to do something, then set that goal. And it's going to be a little bit scary, but you've got to have, you got to take that first step in that direction. So, I don't know. That's the first thing I say is man, be willing to be risky and to take that step in the direction you want to go.
So the last segment is the Freedom Fighter of the Week. And this is someone that's been influential in your life in helping you get to where you are today. And it could be more than one people, because I know sometimes we have a long list of people to thank. But who is your Freedom Fighter of the Week?
Oh man, my freedom fighter of the week would have to go to my best friend, Emmy. She would be my freedom fighter of the week for sure. So, she's been like my go-to with everything, right? Like she's the human that I can call and be like, hey, I need my horses here. I need you to be here. I need all these things. And she drops it to do that. So I would definitely say that's the case. She quit her job last summer in order to come and haul and help me at the rodeos all summer.
Wow.
She's going to do the same thing this summer, right? So yeah, that's a no-brainer for this time.
Well, that's incredible. Well, shout out to her. And that's what a friend and just a great person to have by your side. Wow.
Yeah.
So Amberley, where can people find you? And if someone is listening, whether it's a school, what kind of speaking engagements do you kind of do? Do you speak to schools, or are you kind of open to speaking to different audiences?
It's all over. It's all over. It is anywhere from elementary schools to entire business corporations. I mean, just in this last month, I spoke at a middle school, an elementary, a high school, and I did a charity gala. Or gala. I don't know how to say that one. I did an entire business corporation. I did a conference. I am doing a healthcare conference in a couple days. I fly out tomorrow to Kansas to speak at another school. I mean, it's all across the board. It is all across the board. And I love that. I love that I get to jump around and one day speak to a group of tiny kids, and the next day it's for an entire business conference. So it's everything. I mean, last week I was in Wyoming speaking to for the governor of Wyoming. So it's definitely a little bit of everything.
Well, that's incredible. So if you're listening, businesses, schools, administrators, it would be incredible to have Amberley at your school or at your business. So, and they could reach you at your website as well.
Yep. Find me on my website, amberleysnyder.org.
And where
you can shoot me a message there.
Where else can they find you? Email, Instagram, other social media platforms. Where can people reach you at?
Oh yeah, all of them, right? You got to be on the Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and what else is there now?
TikTok,
Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok. I mean, everything. You can find me on all of those, of course.
The like a full-time job.
Me is usually. It is though. It is though, to just answer everything and then try to keep up. And I'm like, I don't even try to do the TikTok dances. Let's get real. Like that's going to get way too hard. So I'm like, I don't know. Just you can find me anywhere. So on all of those, I answer all of my messages, or at least I get to read them. So you can find me on all of the platforms.
Well, thank you so much, Amberley. I appreciate you taking the time. I know your time is valuable. You have a lot going on, so it means just a lot to us. We're very honored, grateful to have you on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.